Hey, architecture firm owners and emerging leaders. Get ready for unparalleled insight into the development of a world-class architecture firm and a worldwide organization driving the digital transformation of the design and construction industry. With Build Smart, the podcast that's changing how our profession operates. We share the incredible stories behind innovation in the building industry with my friend and co-host, Patrick McLeamy, FAIA, former CEO of the international architecture firm, HOK.
You know, Yamasaki's office or firm lasted during his lifetime. And when he passed away, I think that was the end of the Yamasaki office. Helmut did not want that. He wanted a firm that would live out and grow beyond the founders.
In Season 1, discover the untold stories behind HOK's meteoric rise, from 150 employees in St. Louis to a powerhouse with over 1,900 staff members and 27 offices worldwide.
You know, they weren't as polite as the Kojima people. That was just boom. And anytime you have a creditor, whether it's Kojima or the bank, that wants their money, unless you can raise money someplace else, you are out of business.
Bankrupt. And hold on tight for Season 2, where Patrick takes us on a new adventure as chairman of Building Smart International, shaping the future of digital transformation in the design, construction, and operation of built assets.
Ian Howell, Ken Harold, and I, Ken was my technical representative from HOK. The three of us took a tour of Europe of 5 cities in 5 days. Very busy time.
Simply follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Smart now and uncover lessons that will transform you and your architecture firm. Hey, architecture firm owners and emerging leaders. Get ready for unparalleled insight into the development of a world-class architecture firm and a worldwide organization driving the digital transformation of the design and construction industry. With Build Smart, the podcast that's changing how our profession operates. We share the incredible stories behind innovation in the building industry with my friend and co-host, Patrick McLeamy, FAIA, former CEO of the international architecture firm, HOK.
You know, Yamasaki's office or firm lasted during his lifetime. And when he passed away, I think that was the end of the Yamasaki office. Helmut did not want that. He wanted a firm that would live out and grow beyond the founders.
In Season 1, discover the untold stories behind HOK's meteoric rise, from 150 employees in St. Louis to a powerhouse with over 1,900 staff members and 27 offices worldwide.
You know, they weren't as polite as the Kojima people. That was just boom. And anytime you have a creditor, whether it's Kojima or the bank, that wants their money, unless you can raise money someplace else, you are out of business.
Bankrupt. And hold on tight for Season 2, where Patrick takes us on a new adventure as chairman of Building Smart International, shaping the future of digital transformation in the design, construction, and operation of built assets.
Ian Howell, Ken Harold, and I, Ken was my technical representative from HOK. The three of us took a tour of Europe of 5 cities in 5 days. Very busy time.
Simply follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Smart now and uncover lessons that will transform you and your architecture firm. My name is Mark R. LePage, and you are listening to Entree Architect Podcast, where each week I speak with inspiring, passionate people who share their knowledge and expertise, all to help you build a better business as a small firm entrepreneur architect. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Scott Specht, founding partner at Specht Novak, to the podcast. Scott's a true pioneer in architecture. He's designed the revolutionary Next American House, a windowless house. Yes, I said windowless house, focusing on internal vistas and natural illumination from a central courtyard. We're going to talk about experimental projects today. And as we explore this cutting-edge concepts, especially this specific house, this windowless house, is specifically relevant to the fringe properties of our urban growing environments. So this is going to be an exciting conversation. We're going to talk about the windowless house. We're going to talk about experimental projects in general. Scott Specht, welcome to Entre Architect Podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's good to have you here. I'm excited about this conversation. I think the idea of architects doing experimental projects as part of your overall practice and the benefits of doing that, I think is an important one, important conversation. But I also think from an architect's point of view, it's an exciting conversation, right? Every architect wants to do those creative experimental projects, but not many of us do it. And so I'm excited about having this conversation.
Well, it's interesting. The culture really has changed. When I was coming up as an architect in the 1990s, it was very, very common to do mostly experimental projects, especially in New York City where our practice was. It was kind of a recession time. There wasn't much work. So people would do an apartment renovation to keep the bills paid. And then they would have some manifesto they were working on in the background. And that was pretty much everyone. I remember a comment once from a colleague who was like, we submitted for something. We had a lot of built work, interior projects at the time. And they're like, don't you do any paper architecture? And I was like, yeah, we do, but we have built work as well. So it's really changed a lot. And I think that kind of era from the 1970s through the 90s was full of that. Rem Koolhaas got his start doing Delirious New York, paper architecture, and built his practice on that. And everybody was doing something like that. And in the past 10, 15 years, 20 years, it's really dropped off. You just don't see that many architects. Maybe it's a factor of having so much work to do that you just don't have time for these extraneous projects that aren't bringing in income. But I think it's a valuable thing, and it was sad to see it go. So I'm hoping it makes a comeback.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we're going to have a conversation about it. I want to hear your full origin story, but looking at your bio, you've worked with KPF, you've worked with Deborah Burke, you've worked with Daniel Libeskind, which his whole career started in experimental architecture. And so I'm sure that's part of the influence. So share your story. When did you discover your passion for architecture, and maybe who or what inspired you to get started?
Well, I didn't have a passion for architecture. When I was growing up, my dad was a contractor, an electrical contractor. And I remember sitting at the dining room table counting light fixtures for him. And I wouldn't consider that fun work. So I really didn't think about architecture that much. I used to love to build models, but my real passion at the time was making movies. I had a pretty advanced Super 8 camera that I'd saved up for. And I used to do special effects laden sci-fi epics. So the entire garage, my parents were very tolerant, and the garage was turned into a studio. And I had black velvet on one wall, and I used to have spaceships flying against the black velvet, and I did superimposition and a lot of pretty advanced stuff for the time. So I thought naturally I would go into filmmaking.
So a Star Wars fan, no doubt.
Yeah, it was actually pre-Star Wars. I remember reading a lot about Star Wars before it came out and, being all hyped up for it. And when it came out, I was actually one of the few people who was disappointed when Star Wars came out when I first saw it. I was like, oh, this is kind of like for kids.
Overhyped.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be a more adult, sophisticated thing. But anyway, at age 12, that was what it was. But anyway, so film was the thing. And I went to school in Florida. I grew up in Tampa, and I went to University of Florida for my undergraduate. And I got an architecture degree there, but all the time I was doing a lot of projects that had to do with production design. So I would do sets, elaborate sets, and photograph them, miniatures and things like that, and made a portfolio and sent it around to a number of people. I sent it to David Lynch and a couple of directors that I really liked at the time, and they were all very pleasant, wrote back, but there were really no bites. But I did get one small bite in New York City from a company that did motion graphics for like when the news came up. So they have their logo flying around. And at the time that was pre-computer, they did it all with giant animation stands and hand-drawn cells and things like that. And I did that for a couple of months and realized this is not for me either. So I immediately applied to an architecture firm, actually KPF, Cohn Pedersen Fox, got a job there. And that was the start of the architecture. And I realized you can kind of do the same thing with architecture that you can with film. You can create a narrative, and you can have a procession through a building that tells a story, and you can do a lot of the things that you always wanted to do in film in architecture.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. And so how did you end up having your own firm?
I worked for Cohn Pedersen Fox for 4 years, then went back to grad school at Yale after that. And I met my partner/wife in Yale, and we started a practice right out of school pretty much. I worked for Deborah Burke and Daniel Libeskind kind of on a part-time basis. Deborah Burke was a little bit more full-time. And then Daniel Libeskind was one of my professors at Yale. So he called me in to do two projects for him, Alexanderplatz redevelopment in Berlin and the World Trade Center project. So I worked with him on those two projects. And then we both started our own practice in New York. It was Specht Hartman at the time, and started off doing very, very tiny projects. A radiator cover, believe it or not, was one of our first projects. And there were a lot of like kitchen renovations with cabinetry and countertops and stuff like that. And very, very slowly, the hard way, built our way up. We did some of that kind of work for someone who owned a business. They called us in to do their office space. So we did that. And then, it kind of snowballed from there.
And that was New York City, you said?
In New York City. So we were in New York City for a very long time. And I moved to Austin about 20 years ago. It was when Louise Hartman, my partner and wife, got offered a job as one of the deans at the UT School of Architecture. And so we were like, do we move? I don't know. And we came to Austin, which was this tiny town at the time. And we're like, are we really going to move here? So we did. And I was flying back and forth to New York, running the office in New York, and had a small office here. And it kind of then shifted focus to more Austin, less New York. But now we have a very odd practice. It's not focused on one specific location. We do projects all over the country. And that developed organically as well. It was just we'd get calls from unusual places and we took them. So we don't consider ourselves a local architect. We're more national.
Yeah, when you look at the website, that's exactly how it appears. It says that you're in Austin, but it's not super prominent. And the work that you're doing is all over the world. And so it's clear that you're a global firm. How did that happen? How did you go from radiator consoles to doing a high-end modern residential all over the world? What was the process to do that?
It was a slow, hard climb. That's all it was. It was just staying at it and chipping away. And, there were ups and downs and things, but there's a lot of luck involved in all of it. We got one client who was someone who had hired a bigger firm to do one of their office spaces, and they were a film startup. And it came in at a much higher budget than they expected. And so they were scavenging around for a tiny firm that could meet their budget. And their budget at the time was insane. At the time, this was the early 2000s, their budget was $25 a square foot.
Oh my goodness.
And if you can imagine buying pencils for a job for $25 a square foot, it's impossible. So we said, we'll try. And we did some interesting things that we really scavenged down on Canal Street for used things. And how can we repurpose these weird pieces of stuff we found? And there was a company called B&Z Steel Shelving. And what they did, they de-installed industrial shelving from factories and warehouses that were going out of business in New York. And we said, what can we build out of these? So we built really interesting partitions and we bolted things to them. And our big thing was to photograph everything we ever did. And maybe from the film background, we really wanted to document it. And it got sent around the photos and got some attention for that. So we kind of became the masters of using off-the-shelf weirdo items in our projects. And so we went into a whole phase, and it was when the dot-com era was happening and people were trying to build cheap offices. So we did walls out of ice cube trays, blue Rubbermaid ice cube trays, or use water bottles and stack them up and build partitions out of them. And so using all these kind of bizarro non-architectural techniques to do projects. And we got more attention that way and slowly snowballed from there, as I said.
Yeah, I could see how that would work. I mean, a combination of doing attention-grabbing projects with these unique materials and products and high-quality photography and sharing it early, because it sounds like you were sharing it pretty early on the internet. So when people were looking for interesting projects, they were finding you.
This was pre-internet. And at the time, life was easier because there were only, a few magazines that if you got in those magazines, everyone who's looking for office spaces or interior design or whatever, there were only a few places they could look. And if you got to know those people, you were in. It's not like the internet now where it's very hard to get attention amongst all the noise. So
especially if you have professional photography.
It is. And this was old format 4x5 photography on film.
Ready to publish images helps to get published in magazines.
Yep.
Yeah. So it sounds like experimental projects are in your DNA. It really is from the very beginning. experimenting with different materials, different products to come up with architecture. So I want to focus on this windowless house that you've designed recently. You've named it the Next American House. Tell me about this, because when I heard windowless house, I'm like, well, this is going to get a lot of listens on the podcast because every architect's going to want to hear about this windowless house. Tell me about this windowless house.
Window is a misnomer a little bit, and it's a marketing gimmick of sorts because it's true. On the perimeter of the house, there are no windows that look out at anything. It's a solid wall all the way around. But there are 2 courtyards on the interior, and they're all glass, floor to ceiling. So you walk into this house, and it is brighter than any other house that you've seen. It's just, it doesn't look at anything else. And it started as an experimental project. There were a whole line of small house projects we started to get into. One was the Zero House that got a good bit of press. It was a self-sufficient, standalone kind of thing. And this was kind of the next idea. So I was doing renderings in evenings and sketching up things. And, I was showing this kind of windowless compound house with, war zones and with rubble around it and everything else. But it was not intended to be an actual built project. But I started to look around in Austin for a place to build a house of my own and found a great lot that's an urban infill lot. In Austin, and in many places now, there's zoning for ADUs, accessory dwelling units. And so if you own a house with a backyard and the lot is of a certain size, you can either build your own ADUs in the back, or you can subdivide that lot and sell it off as a condo regime and make some money off that lot. So I found one in a great location, but it was someone's backyard and it did have a gravel alley access. So I snapped that piece of property up at the time because it was undervalued. And I was like, okay, what do I put here? So on every side of this house, you're just looking at the side of another house, or on one side is a garage or the alley, which had a bunch of weeds on it. So there's no views here. If you put windows on the outside, it's useless. And so I started to think of this experimental project that, well, maybe it actually would be a great house to have in this site. And it does make a great urban infill project. Now that it's almost complete, you can really see the effect. And you start to think of it in a larger context of like suburban houses. The model for a suburban house doesn't really make a lot of sense when you have 5-foot setbacks on the sides. Your side windows are always looking at another house or in the windows of another house. So the blinds are always closed. The backyard is fenced off usually. And in most cases now, the front yards are becoming fenced off. So you're more or less walling off your house to start with. It's just you're doing it with fences as opposed to an integral part of the architecture. So this just takes it to the next step. It really takes it back in time. The models here are ancient houses of many cultures, like ancient Roman house or Mexican house. They were all interior courtyard houses, urban houses. They took it a little further even where they had storefronts on the front of the house, and you entered and there was an impluvium with the light coming in, and it follows those models, but it changes it for levels of privacy we expect today. So the courtyards, you're not looking in this house across a courtyard into another bedroom or private space. Each one's pretty carefully modulated. So you're looking at a private courtyard space that is going to function like you want it to in a house today.
Let's take a quick break to say thank you to our sponsors for their support of this episode. As an architect or firm owner, you might find yourself swamped with drawings that take up most of your day, leaving you with little time to manage your business. MGS Global Group can lighten your load by handling all of your drafting and rendering needs. Their experienced team of architects and designers can convert your schematic designs into DDs and CDs with minimal supervision. With expertise in industry-leading tools like Revit, ArchiCAD, and more, MGS is the perfect partner for managing your project spikes and urgent tasks. They work as an extension of your team and follow your standards to ensure the quality and accuracy of your drawings. Having served sole practitioners, small firms, and publicly traded companies since 2008, MGS guarantees you get the help you need right when you need it. Visit mgsglobalgroup.com and book your free consultation today. That's mgsglobalgroup.com. ARCAT's Spec Wizard is the tool that will help you save time writing specifications. Going through the manufacturer's specification line by line to find the right product leads to frustration and errors. And that's where SpechtWizard comes in. It's a free, patented tool that allows you to select products and options error-free and generate a 3-part specification in minutes. Go to arcat.com, that's ARCAT.com, and try SpechtWizard today. Please visit our sponsors today and thank them. Thank them for supporting you, the EntreArchitect community. When you design a project like this, are you designing it with this mindset that this is a one-off house, or is it a prototype for other houses? Especially with a name like the Next American House, are you sort of looking at this as a prototype?
Always. That's been our motives from the start. The Zero House I mentioned before was done as this sort of, you build it, you sit it in a site on very minimal helical anchor foundation, and it operates itself and runs forever. So it was meant for remote sites. So this one was really intended. We were, gearing up to actually try to get it produced and build a model that people could see and visit and then sell them. It got a lot of calls, a lot of attention. The problem with that one was the cost in relation to the square footage. Almost or no clients actually ended up getting past that point because it's very expensive when it's a fully self-sufficient house. So started to do other projects. There's one called the Comfort Capsule that we're about to launch that's taking that Zero House idea, but making it cheaper and smaller. But this one, the same thing is I hope that people can visit this house, and we're trying to get it on the EA tour so we can get visitors around town. But I hope people see that, this could be, modified for this piece of scrap property that's not suitable for a normal traditional house and want to build them.
So if you do design it as a prototype, are you thinking that the next one that you do, would it be pre-manufactured or custom built or?
No, we went down that road before and it doesn't make a lot of sense.
So it's just the design would be replicated.
Yeah, not even the design. It's more the concept. It's more that you have this walled house with interior courtyards and of a certain look and style that I think can be expanded or contracted depending on the number of bedrooms you want or what you want on the interior. So it's really just an idea. And there are a number of ideas tied into this. The front facade, for example, is just a big blank panel that will get wrapped like a car with a graphic. And so you can change out your front facade every, whatever you feel like every few months.
You could sell advertising.
You can sell advertising. So that was the first one I was going to put up, was like a Better Call Saul kind of, lawyer ad on the front. Unfortunately, no one walks down this alley, so it's not going to get too much visibility, but we'll put a piece of art up. And yeah, so it's got a lot of things like that can be adapted for many, many different sites.
So you were talking about how you hope that this would be a model where people can come and visit. What is the strategy after it's built? Because obviously you're building this to attract attention and to be able to potentially do this again for other clients. What does that marketing strategy look like?
Yeah, it's what we usually go through, even for our normal projects, is we'll photograph, videos, do everything we possibly can to get it recorded and documented. Even the changes in the signage on the outside will get documented. And then we pitch it to different media outlets and online. So we always try to get as much attention as we possibly can for each project. I think it's a good thing. A lot of architects I went to school with shy away from that. They're like, if you do a good enough project, it'll sell itself. And that does not happen. So
no,
it's you really have to be out there pushing these things. And there are better and worse ways to do it. But I think that we're big believers in that, have been from the start, of if you think you have a good idea, there's no shame in getting it out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So with your experience and your skill in film and telling stories through video and photography, are you also documenting the process and telling that story while you're designing and building it?
I wish I had done a better job with that. We are in photos and things, but it could have been taken further. It happened quickly, and it happened when our firm was very busy. So my time in documenting every aspect of it was not the greatest. The other thing is that the actual construction of this house is nothing spectacular. It's the most basic building techniques you could imagine, but that's part of it. after going through designing every bolt on the Zero House, we realized this is not the way to get things built. So keep it simple in terms of constructability and do something exciting with the concept. That's kind of the strategy here. So yeah, we could have gone on video, a frame wall for endlessly, but I don't think too many people would have wanted to watch that.
Yeah, well, you'd be surprised. There are a lot of people who are fascinated by the process of construction, however mundane we think it is as professionals.
True. Well, there's a builder here, Matt Reisinger, who has really made his career off of that. I mean, he was a high-end builder in Austin, and we've worked with him before. And he's just slowly started doing videos and became more and more professional with it. And now that video YouTube channel, I think, far supersedes the income from his construction practice.
That's absolutely his primary business now today, because he's got a full network going and everything now.
Still building.
But still building, because that's his content. So Matt's done a great job with his channel. If anybody hasn't seen it, it's Matt Reisinger. It's Build is the brand. So you can search on YouTube.
Yes, I think it's build.com.
Yeah, right, the website. With experimental projects, so now you have experience in this and you've been doing it really your entire career. How has the experimental projects impacted the rest of the work that you do?
In the most basic sense, they're great formal generators. And that was something I probably picked up from Daniel Libeskind. It's like he did these renderings when he was a teacher. He got huge sheets of Mylar and just started drawing at night and would just let his mind go. And you can see these things published. They're called micromegas. And there's a whole series of these drawings. They're just, formal experiments and exercises. But he then literally used those to design projects. He would say, let's focus on this, 2 square inch piece of this drawing. Let's turn that into a building, and literally take that and turn it into a 3-dimensional thing, because he's like, no, don't interpret it, because that kind of takes the juice out of it when you interpret it. You want to just literally take that thing and turn it into a building. And that's kind of was his design. I always thought it was something great and lofty, in terms of concept, but that was it. And I'm not sure there's anything wrong with that, is you tend to repeat a lot there, and I haven't been in touch with them for a while. So doing experiments can give you, when you're not thinking about architecture directly, you can get a lot of formal ideas from just playing around, I think. And that's one great thing about experiments. But it's also taking these ideas you might have. We did one called the Prairie House, where you take something going on in society, I guess. And at the time, we were interested in reducing fossil fuels and, what will happen to these gas stations that are everywhere. So we took a gas station canopy with the pumps under it and said, we'll use that as our base structure for a house project, and did that, and did something with a prairie on the top of it and up on big legs and everything else. So sometimes you can do social commentary with these projects as well, and that ties into getting attention for them. So some people are interested, this happens to be a hot topic of the day. Here's an architecture project that matches that, and you can make a lot of it. But it plays both ways. You can take that social idea, turn it into a form, and then we've used some of the forms that were generated in that in other projects as well, because, we like the way those things looked.
Yeah. So you, as the designers, are being inspired by those experimental projects. Are your clients also looking at those projects and saying, hey, I like what you've done there. I'd like that in my project?
It's funny. There's a bifurcation. They do feed into each other, but like the Zero House got a lot of promotion on things that were like popular mechanics, let's say. And a lot of them were green builds kind of things. And so you got a lot of people who wanted to do a very inexpensive version of it somewhere. So the primary work we do now is larger, fancier houses, let's say. And so they don't really merge, but I think just the talking about interesting things goes back and forth in some ways. Our website did have a full section that was just experimental projects. And we've just built a new website since our name changed to Specht Novak. And we do have that experimental section, but it hasn't been fleshed out yet. So I hope to build that back into the content and hopefully use it.
So what does the future look like for Specht Novak? Do you have plans and ideas for the next American house?
Yeah. Right now I'm focusing on this one. I'd like to do one at a time and sort of let it play out. So this one is sort of ramping up towards when it gets completed. I think we'll try to get a lot of visitors and try to see where that concept can take us. it is playing right into the right time of people, which is sad in a way, of people being more fearful in some ways and wanting a walled compound, and there are negatives and positives. A lot of people come and say, oh, I hate this idea because I want to participate in my neighborhood. But when you actually look at how people are in a suburban setting, it's in an inner suburb, I would say. So it's a house type designed for a prairie or some sort of thing with large vistas outside, and it's been crammed into this small suburban space. I don't think that ever worked well. And it's not like people are sitting on their porch and waving to their neighbors outside every day. It just doesn't really happen much. So I think the idea of it sounds forbidding and off-putting and everything else, but the reality of it is not that. It's really no different than in New York City. You have your apartment building you live in, and you have a front door key, and then you go up to your apartment, and you're in your own little world up there, and you can look out at the rest of the world, but you're not participating. Even though you're in a dense city, you're not really participating with the street front activities when you're in your private space. So I think this need for private versus public, it really needs to be looked at in a little more detail. There's this whole utopian idea of what your great village should be, and I don't know if that matches the reality of even what we really want. So it's interesting to look at those things in more detail.
I think also with this house specifically, and what you would use it for in other projects, is also not only sort of the walled compound, but also being able to utilize those unusable lots, right? There are lots in every city. They end up being parking lots or junk collectors because they're not buildable, because architects haven't looked at ways to build on them. And so a project like this house is really an inspiring project to motivate people to look at those sites in different ways and see that it can be a beautiful piece of architecture.
Yeah, that's honestly what got me most excited about this to start with. When I was looking for this piece of property in Austin, I was always attracted to these properties that no one wanted, which was like it backs up against an interstate on one side, and it's a tiny wedge of property that where an exit comes off or something. And it's like nobody can get rid of these properties, and they're so cheap. It's like, wow, what can I do with that? So that's kind of where it started. And I just looked for the best of those kind of properties. Now I think people are less hesitant to buy those properties because you don't find them like you used to, at least zoned residentially. One of my pushes is also to open up this idea of zoning for commercial or warehouse and not being able to live in them. There's no reason you can't populate them. That mix of uses, I think, used to make cities more exciting when you had, the butter and cheese distributor next to an apartment building next to that kind of. Right now, cities are really restaurants and shops with living above them and bars, and that's it. But that other of actually making things, of distributing things, it's all kind of gone from the city. So I think it drains some of the life, even out of the best cities.
Yeah.
It'd be great to get that back. I know there's noise and odor issues. Those can be fixed.
Yeah. Well, I love the idea. It's very inspiring, especially for other architects, to not only do it for their own marketing purposes, but you could even do it as a developer, right? Go search out these forgotten lots that nobody can sell and go design a solution for them and say, okay, well, here's a solution. Let's go buy that and build that solution and then go sell it. Because it's such a cheap piece of property, you could probably make a decent profit on it and then do it again and again and again and build up your portfolio while you're designing these, very unique, inspirational, experimental projects.
Yeah, for a while, this house was called the Scraplands house because that's what it was scrap properties. And nobody else used that. I'm trademarking it. So, but that's where it goes. And you have to be careful when you do that, because when I was doing a search in Austin, there are certain pieces of property that are like, you see them and you go, oh my God, why has nobody bought this? It's beautiful. Well, then you go look at the GIS surveys and it's in a floodplain. And there may be sections of that that are not in a floodplain that you think you could build on. But, the city is very careful that if there is a flood, you not only have to have land above the floodplain level, but a way to get out of that. So if you can't cross into it in an easy way, they're still not going to let you build on it. And there was one time there was a property I was interested in. I took an initial sketch down to the city, and they have a pre-development center here where you can walk in and just get their opinion on things. And there was this property, I took it in, and the reviewer immediately said, oh, not that property again. Because I think it had changed. So many people were interested in it, and every one of them came in thinking, oh, this is going to be a great thing, and you just can't build on it. It's unbuildable. So
Yeah. And then also you have, in industrial areas, you have hazardous waste and different conditions that you have to, which you could buy the property really cheap, but it'll cost you millions to clean it up, which essentially makes it unusable. Super interesting, Scott. I appreciate you sharing this project and your story with us. Before we wrap up, I'd love to get your take on the business side of architecture. The listeners of this episode are thousands of architects. Lots of us are business owners. What would you say is one thing that a small firm architect can do today to build a better business for tomorrow?
I think I touched on it earlier, which was even your tiniest first project, document the hell out of it and take photographs of everything and videotape and video yourself in front of that and building it. And, you really can get a lot of mileage out of that for a very, very long time. And just the more you're out there and showing what you do, the more attention you're going to get and the more projects you're going to get. So if you think what you're doing is valuable and useful, letting other people see that and agree with it and then give you work to follow on your ideas, I think is a good strategy. And luckily, we started very early with that and built it up now. I do think if you're starting now, it's hard. It just is hard to get attention when there's so much noise out there. So doing experimental projects and topics that other people haven't been thinking about, I think is a good way to cut through some of that noise as well.
His name is Scott Specht. It's Specht Novak is the firm. The website is Specht Novak. The website URL will be on our show notes. So go check them out. Go see what they're doing. They do beautiful architecture. Hopefully the experimental project section will be vetted and posted soon because I'd love to see that. But the projects that are on the website are beautiful and they're all over the world. So go check them out at spechtnovak.com. The link will be on the show notes. Scott, thank you for sharing your story here today and sharing some information about experimental projects here at Entre Architect Podcast.
Thank you. It's been fun.
It has been fun. Thanks. If you liked this episode of Entre Architect Podcast, please share a link to this episode with a friend. Either just click the share button or highlight the URL and send the link to this episode with a friend, because that's how Entre Architect has grown to serve thousands more architects just like you throughout the 10 plus years of Entre Architect. That's how we've grown, architect to architect. So I would love for you to share this episode and all the episodes with one friend every week. We'd love that. And thank you to our sponsors for this episode. We don't have an episode if there's no sponsors. So thank you to our sponsors. Links to those sponsors, which you should go visit and click, and all the resources that we discussed today for this specific episode, they are all available at entrearchitect.com/podcast. Every episode that we've recorded is there, entrearchitect.com/podcast. Go click the links to the sponsors and say hello. Entre Architect is a member of the Gable Media Podcast Network. You should go visit that at gablemedia.com. That is the next evolution of interactive media and resources for the AEC community. You can now earn continuing education credits for listening to select episodes of this podcast, Entre Architect Podcast. Yes, AIA CEUs for listening to a podcast. It's there, and many other podcasts are there as well, and you can listen to all of them and get credit. Learn more about our program, Gable Members Program, at the gablemedia.com/members website. That's GABL media.com/members. And if you are a small firm architect, join us today at Entre Architect Network. That is the worldwide organization for small firm entrepreneur architects. If you own your own architecture firm, you are an entrepreneur architect. You are an Entre Architect. With weekly live group business coaching, we have business coaching there, monthly live business training with AIA CEUs, 2 a month, so 24 AIA credits per year, including 12 of those are HSWs. We have them in the membership. Business resources, all the resources you need to run your business, special session webinars, mastermind groups, and a thriving community of small firm architects just like you. Hundreds of architects are there waiting for you to join. So we provide the support and encouragement you need to succeed as a small firm architect. I know that you haven't been trained as a business person when you launched your firm. That's what we do. Come learn how to run a business at Entre Architect Network. And today you can go join right now for free for 30 days at this link, entrearchitects.com/30 days will give you free 30 days for membership. Go check it out at entrearchitects.com/30 days, and I will see you there. Thank you for listening to this episode of Entre Architect Podcast. My name is Mark R. LePage, and I want you to remember 3 words: love, learn, share. Have a great day.
Imagine earning continuing education credits while doing exactly what you're doing right now. Well, you can. Gable Media has revolutionized the way you earn your continuing education credits with a groundbreaking approach. Forget running around town and scouring the internet for credit-worthy courses. Fulfill your CE requirements effortlessly by listening to engaging podcasts just like the one you're listening to now. Our podcasts are designed to educate, entertain, and inspire, all in a user-friendly environment. But wait, there's more. Architects, Gable Media is also approved as an AIA continuing education services provider. Upon completion, we handle everything, from reporting your hours directly to the AIA to storing your certificates in your personal Gable Media profile for your self-reporting needs. So follow the link in the show notes and start earning your credits in the most innovative and entertaining way possible with Gable Media.
Attention architects and creative minds, get ready to supercharge your brand with Build Your Brand, the podcast that's unlocking the secrets of branding success for creatives. Hey there, it's Mark R. LePage, founder of Entre Architect, and I'm inviting you to join my friend, architect marketing expert Jeff Eccles at Build Your Brand podcast, where he explores the captivating stories of the world's top brands and transforms their lessons into powerful moves for small firm architects and creatives like you. In Season 1, Jeff shares the thrilling tale of Southwest Airlines, where he dissects their journey to the summit and distills it into strategies tailor-made for you.
It's important to keep in mind that companies like Southwest compete in the real world, just like you, and face real-world challenges, just like you. You might be surprised at how similar those challenges are to the struggles that you grapple with on a day-to-day basis.
Don't miss out on your blueprint for success. Subscribe, tune in, and let's build your brand together.
You may have noticed that the very best brands in the world are also known for having somewhat unique corporate cultures. That's often the glue that holds everything together when they encounter those rough spots.
We don't do it because it inconveniences the passengers to whom we are primarily dedicated, the short haul, frequent flyer.
Follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Your Brand today. Remember, no matter the size, the journey's the same. Your brand's journey to the top starts here.